quick intro to all the new followers. I'm Dami. I run a marketing company in Melbourne, Australia. We have approaching 50 staff, which is insane. And we have clients in nearly across most major continents across the world. Today we're going to be talking about the importance of storytelling in sales. So let's talk about storytelling. Now, why is storytelling important? Why do you think it's important in sales? Storytelling. There's a lot of buzzwords in marketing. I feel like a lot of people use buzzwords without knowing what they mean. People might hear PPC, they might hear AdWords, they might hear storytelling, but they don't really understand the power or the intel behind these things. I'll answer that as the first question. So storytelling, all the way back to medieval, prehistoric times, was how humans communicated. If you look at the Egyptian rule, it was through hieroglyphics, right? You'd see triangles and little arrows and shapes, and then there'll be these little faces, things to commemorate pharaohs. And those would storytell to communicate to other people in Egypt. If you look at certain tribes in East and West Africa, right? Certain tribes were able to communicate, even in South America or in parts of Asia, with clicking sounds, right? Clicking sounds with the face, all those things. I know we laugh about that on Instagram, but those things are real, right? So all these communication styles that we use today, whether it's the English Cambridge language across the world, or whether it's French, or whether it's Yoruba, whether it's, whatever it is, a lot of these are evolutionary stages of being able to better fulfill storytelling. How does this relate to sales? I think Albin said it's memorable. So that's partially correct. Storytelling is memorable, but is that the main reason why it's used in sales? Like, why are we using it specifically in sales? Anyone that is watching, the question is, with storytelling, why is storytelling so important in sales? I'm looking for someone to answer that question. And I'll give you a hint, and that hint has to do with the brain. And I'm looking for a key word, or a couple of keywords. But good effort, Albin. It is memorability is a consequence of the key words to why storytelling is used in sales. So I've given everyone a hint. It has to do with the brain. I'm gonna wait 30 more seconds to see if anyone gets it. Why is storytelling so important with sales? Why? What does it do to the brain? Damn, you guys gotta brush up on this. A lot of you guys are marketers. You should know what this is. Okay, so I'll give you guys the answer because it's the first question of the day, right? So, why? Storytelling is important because you're grabbing access to the subconscious. I just write subconscious mind, okay? And anytime you can get access to this subconscious mind, you can influence someone. So I was looking for the word subconscious and influence. INF. Right? Mahawi said it lowers resistance. Correct, it does lower resistance. And lowering resistance is again a consequence of influencing someone's subconscious mind. A lot of people say that buying decisions are made emotionally and logically, and that most people buy 50% logically and 50% emotionally. I argue, after making for our clients over 8 figures in results in sales, I'd argue, having grown, like literally this week, I think it was Wednesday, we just did a company high in appointment sets in one day. The team generated 23 appointments in one day. And part of that is because they understood that if they can influence the subconscious mind, that they're going to have the opportunity to get someone to make a decision, to attend a demo, to book an appointment. The reason why we understand that storytelling hits the subconscious is because it does it opens up what's called a loop. So for example, if someone says no to something, let's just say you're knocking on a door, because a lot of you have probably been to like a door knocking job before, a lot of you maybe have called in a call center before. If you're door knocking at a door, and you look like me, black guy with dreads in Australia, right, predominantly white country, and I'm knocking on the door, they're gonna say, who's this? Not interested. And if I try to say, oh, sir, it's because I've got this window cleaning thing and you really need it and your neighbors need it, they're gonna say F off, and I don't blame them. But if I say, no worries at all, I'll leave, but just before I leave, do you have a child? I don't have a child, by the way. I have a child as well. And it wasn't until I realized the importance of being able to clearly see clearly see through the window to see if a stranger was knocking at the door, that I understood the importance of making sure that my windows were clean. So I know you want me to leave because I'm a stranger, but what if your child opened the door? You know, there's a story about down the street. There's this child who opened the door and he was able to save his mum because he could see clearly through the window. Subconscious influence storytelling. That ability to tell a story, and we'll go over the 3 archetypes of storytelling that you can use in sales, are the difference between closing the deal, the difference between getting an appointment, the difference, okay, between actually getting someone to transact instead of them looking at you as a commodity. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the 3 main types of storytelling that I like to use and my team likes to use when closing deals between $1,500, $2,500, and $5K a month. Okay, so here are the 3 different types of storytelling, and I'm going to ask you guys to help me out on what you think they are. So there's 3 types of storytelling in sales. What do you guys think is one of the ways in which we tell stories when selling? There's no right or wrong answer, but there are 3 core components that I'm looking for. And I'll give you guys a hint. One has to do with the self, one has to do with the other, and one has to do with reality. I'm looking for keywords. Pain. Okay, so pain is again a consequence of storytelling, or rather it's an attribute of a good story. What I'm rather looking for is the 3 buckets of storytelling. Because you can have a story, if you look at most movies, they usually will follow what's called the hero's archetype. So usually at the start of the movie, there's a reality. That reality is obstructed for good or for bad. And then the hero has to create a new identity to get back to a new reality. So there's always going to be an element of pain. Objection handling. That's again a consequence of a good story. So I'll give you guys the first one. The first type of storytelling that I like to use is anecdotal. So an anecdotal story when selling is me talking about an experience that I had, right? So I'll give you one that I literally used today, and we're about to sign this guy up tomorrow. Actually, I'll use one that I used yesterday because this is another similar company in the US. He books through our Facebook ad. He's in LA, younger guy than me. His company's pretty small. I was like, we'll do in the presentation, etc. And he's like, okay, why should I pick you? And I was like, dude, that's a good question. I'd ask the exact same question as you. You know, when I was your age, I was researching Ty Lopez, Sam Ovens, Gary Vee, Alex Becker. And what I realized was having access to them in the flesh was more powerful than me just reading their content, watching their videos, buying their courses. That's why for you, I can suggest that having proximity to me is better than you purchasing my Done For You program. Because I know what it's like to have been you before. I know how difficult it is to get the business off scratch. I know how it is to get the respect from older business owners when you're 21, 22, 23. That's an anecdotal story, and it's anecdotal because I'm using my personal experience to influence the subconscious mind. And what it also does when you open up a story loop is it actually gives you permission to talk for longer. So when you guys study The Wolf of Wall Street, for those of you that have studied Jordan Belfort's sales course, right? And I love his sales course I took when I was 2021. What he's doing when he's looping is he keeps opening up new things or new parts of their brain to be able to entertain another conversation. Storytelling allows you to do that forever. Even if someone says, no, you know what, mate, I completely agree. Again, if I make it anecdotal, you know, I had to say no to a really cool hire earlier in the year, in 2025. And, you know, I had to say no to this hire because they were a perfect fit for what I needed. But I realized everything was about timing. So I realized in March I was going to be able to hire them. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to be the next hire for you, but perhaps now is just not the right time for you to use our service. But with your permission, can I book us in for March 15th, 2026, when the time lines up? See how, again, even though he said no to me, I'm using an anecdotal experience to revisit the conversation, and I'm getting his commitment. You never want to, and you have to be a bit careful with this because you don't want to be a people pleaser. Trust me, sales, if you're a people pleaser, you will not make it. But you also never want to directly attack the ego of a person by saying no, right? So that's the first type of story. The second type